you summarise a guy like Rory into a eulogy? For even within the immediate family, there was a unique connection with each member, a loving uncle, brother, son, and more, but above all, a mate. Similarly, with his friends, it completely covered the spectrum of diversity, the amount of different friendships Rory had, from sharing a lifelong bond with his best mate Turk or James. They did so much together, from primary school and Grease productions, through secondary school and onto Brinsbury and beyond. And there were the sweet old dears whose gardens he used to tend and just make time for, whether it were a game of Scrabble over a cup of tea or giving them the chance to regale the tales of their youth to someone of a different generation who enjoyed hearing them, thus making them still feel an appreciated part of this too busy society. He was equally at home, hanging with the boys and getting into trivial scrapes. One of my favourites being when they borrowed a trampoline from somebody's garden and they carried it through a veritable assault course with the aim of half burying it in a farmer's field. So when the neighbours looked out the window, they would just see a group of lads bouncing in a cornfield. To his granny and grandpa, they will probably laugh and cry every time they remember a wasp getting up his shorts on a road trip. Or another journey when he felt unwell and was sick into a carrier bag with baby holes in it and it went everywhere. And hopefully some more pleasant memories too of the sweet little boy he was. Rory enjoyed his computer games too. Which young lads haven't grown up with Zelda or Mario, get and stay up past bedtime that little bit later just because they were doing so well? In fact, half the shed used to be a games console museum. He prided himself on having pretty much every console, well, the decent ones anyway. But when the iPad came out, Rory was happier playing Mario Kart. The other half of the shed is dominated by garden tools, which he began collecting when he discovered his passion for horticulture, a passion which gave him some focus and ambition. As with Rory, most toe rags are just misguided and frustrated people, and once they find a more productive use for all that bound-up energy, more often than not, the little shits turn good. His love of horticulture and the great outdoors was clear to all. Many people's abiding memories of Rory would be of the pleasant, smiley lad who would always make time for a chat, and you could guarantee you would laugh at least once during that chat, in his wellies or going past on whatever contraption he was then using. Rory would often take himself off on a long walk just to see if he could find something amazing, hiding in plain sight. Most memorably for me, the stunning bee orchid. Or how many of you have seen his TV presenter-style video on YouTube? Every time he spoke about Brinsbury, his eyes beamed wide. It was not quite the same story when he mentioned Chichester Boys High. You have to love what you do, though, and with the work and tasks he was given at Brinsbury, he thrived and developed a real thirst for knowledge on all things horticultural. One of his lecturers has spoken to me since and spoke of the mutual respect Rory had from his other classmates. If they were being loud and unruly and disrupting Rory's learning, he would give the reprimand and was probably able to use more threat than the lecturers in doing so. He also felt more than comfortable to go into other classrooms, not on his course, but covering something that he was interested in, even arranging to meet a group of mature students to lead them on an expedition through woodlands, delighting in telling them all about the mushrooms and other bits they found along the way. It was his application in his quest for knowledge that saw him compete in finals for Young Horticulturist of the Year. It also led to him being awarded the Duncton Trophy upon graduation from Brinsbury College. It was also his gardening knowledge and willingness to lend a hand on whatever projects needed it that made him such a lovable legend around Tangmere. You could point to any flora in a garden and he would tell you all he knew about it, how to tend to it, and even its name in Latin, another of his endearing quirks. The former Tangmere village Bobby, along with her condolences, told us how Rory used to turn up to where she was holding the youth's community service programmes and went to help them out, even though he wasn't under court order to be there. He still got into his own fair share of trouble, even after his calling to gardening. I remember a few late-night phone calls to help him out a bit. They generally occurred after a good night out. Beer is great for bravado, and Rory was never short of that to begin with. Once he and the boys were out, the world better beware, because a party was going to happen, and Rory loved to party. He got kicked out of Thursday's nightclub for being drunk and disorderly, but he was sober, just dancing like a mong and letting loose. He danced how he wanted, he wore what he wanted to, or anything you would dare or bet him to wear, whether it's shorts when it's freezing or pink for a good cause. There was no path for his course. He was a bit of an oddball, a true eccentric, a down-to-earth, lovable guy, but he had a temper and he could flip quickly too, but we won't dwell on that too much. Remember, he damaged his finger crushing a beer bottle in a row with a mate over a bloody Cadbury's cream egg. It never got him down though, and he got it chopped off in the end. And every time he would first meet a mate of mine, he would have the stumpy bit pressed to his nostril. It looked like he had his whole finger up his nose. Or he might go and poke it into the ring of somebody's donut while smiling. Many people met him through his passion for skating. Some he encouraged to try it for the first time, and with other, more experienced skaters, they would challenge each other to greater tricks, going so far as setting up their own skate park in a quiet corner of the village. Rory also made many online friends through playing Scrabble. He generally had to play online because everyone else got bored of losing to him. Again, his Latin and flora knowledge helped him to reach pretty high scores, along with his love of 2 or 3 letter words in an optimum space on the board. In the later stages of his life, Rory became more consciously aware of what society or humankind should hold as a responsibility to the earth he cared so much for. And, sadly, he became more consciously aware of exactly what damage humans have done, continue to do, and greedily, schemingly plan to do to this fragile planet we call home. Most patterns seem to persist through nature. Rory seemed like he could take all life had to throw at him. The same presumption goes that the earth will be okay, despite our recent impacts on it since the industrial age began. Just because something seems tough, it does not mean that it is also not delicate and fragile. Rory tried to do his part to save the world and to make people seriously think about the possible damage fracking could do to the land, water and environment, not just to look to cheap pound signs and scoring points against the Russians' gas supply. How many of you drove along the A27 a while back and saw Rory's handmade anti-fracking banner? It was a real labour of love. He went along to numerous other protests to protect the liberty of the public too, like with his vendetta mask on the Million Mask March, challenging the greedy banking elite system and the lengths they go to preserve their power. And when the protest camp turned up on the doorstep of the county council main offices and lived on their lawn, Rory was there. Anyone who crossed Rory's path would be considered a friend, and he made an awful lot of them. We all went on a family holiday to Crete, and he heard his name bellowed at him. "Is your name Rory Mins?" Someone asked. We had gone to Crete, and there was still somebody there whose life he had touched. His reach now extends into space, and a star bears his name as his light shines on.